Hey, beautiful, please consider subscribing to our channel if you've been enjoying these stories. Your support helps a lot. Aid us in reaching our goal of 1,000 subscribers.
The lights in the cargo bay flickered a dull amber, casting shadows that danced like specters across the cold steel walls. The groan of strained metal echoed as the hatch opened, and the prisoner was shoved forward with a grunt. He stumbled but didn't fall. Despite the bruises mottling his cheek and the dried blood along his temple, the man walked with a calm, deliberate pace. Silent. Croth Varn watched from the upper catwalk, his forearms folded across his broad chest, mandibles clicking in irritation. He had expected more of a reaction, terror, pleading, maybe even bravado, but this one was quiet. Too quiet. That him? One of Crotha's lieutenants asked. The shorter Zarnari mercenary tilted his head, blue tendrils twitching. Crotha's yellow eyes narrowed. That's the one. Earthborn. They say he burned 3 fleets before vanishing like a myth. Doesn't look like much now, does he? The human was shoved into a restraining chair welded into the center of the bay. He didn't resist. The restraints hissed shut around his wrists and ankles, locking him in place like a specimen on display. Croft descended the stairs with heavy thuds, armored feet clanging against the metal. You hear that, human? Some idiot in the Crimson Council paid us double to bring you in alive. Alive specifically. Makes me curious. He leaned in close, foul breath warm against the man's skin. So who are you really? The human said nothing. He simply raised his head, stared through Croth as if the warlord didn't exist. Pale gray eyes, calm and unreadable. Croth snarled and delivered a backhand across the man's face. A fresh cut bloomed across his cheek, but he didn't even flinch. That only irritated Croth more. Fine, Croth growled. Stay quiet. You'll talk eventually. Everyone does. Especially when Yarvek starts his work. Yarvek, lean and insectoid, clicked his mandibles at the mention of his name and hissed excitedly. Croth motioned toward him. Take him below. Strap him to the harmonics rig. I want to know what he knows by nightfall. The restraints unlocked and the human was pulled to his feet. He didn't resist the guards. As they dragged him from the room, he turned slightly, just enough for Croth to see the barest hint of a smile tug at the corner of his lip. Crotha's brow twitched. That smile, it wasn't defiant. It was something else. Knowing. The corridors of the Scarthol Fong twisted in angular, foreign architecture. It was once a Terran warship, long before Crotha's pirates had found it adrift near the debris fields of Zeta 9. Its skeleton bore the marks of human design, but now it was plastered with mercenary graffiti, mismatched wiring and 1,000 brutal customizations. Still, the ship had never fully submitted to its new masters. As they passed through a maintenance corridor, the lights dimmed suddenly, shivering into a momentary blackout. The mercenaries cursed, pulling at the human's arms more tightly. The ship came back online but the temperature felt colder. Just power cycling, Yarvek said more to himself than anyone. She does that sometimes. Ancient junk always has bugs. They passed through another bulkhead, one that hissed slowly before opening. As they stepped through, the human tilted his head slightly, eyes briefly flicking toward the control panel just before the door sealed shut again. He had counted the seconds. In the brig, the other prisoners sat slumped in their cells. Most were species Crotha's crew had captured during raids, smugglers, miners, rival pirates. Some barely lifted their heads as Yarvek dragged the human past them. But one, a reptilian being with jagged scales and eyes like molten silver, watched with open curiosity. Human, he rasped through the bars. What did you do to get noticed? The human didn't answer, but his gaze met the reptilian's. There was recognition there, not of face but of purpose. The prisoner leaned back, a slow grin spreading across his scaled face. I've seen that look before, the creature said softly. You're not here by accident. Yarvek sneered and slammed a baton against the bars. Silence. They reached the lowest deck, a forgotten sublevel once used as a weapons lab. It had since become Yarvek's playground. Old interrogation machines blinked to life. A suspended chair sat at the center, wires hanging like veins from the ceiling. Yarvek motioned. Strap him in. Let's see if Earthborn nerves scream like everyone else's. The guards complied. The human made no effort to fight. His eyes scanned the room, quick, subtle. He noted the panel layout, the half-exposed circuitry in the wall, the lingering symbol of a Terran eagle just beneath a panel of scavenged plating. Once he was locked in place, Yarvek approached with a neural spike in hand. They said you used to command. That you led ships. A hero once. He chuckled, clicking his mandibles. Now you're just a relic tied to your own bones. The human's eyes never left the ceiling. Then he spoke for the first time since capture. Command override. Protocol Echo Black. Voice authorization. Elias Vance, command code 773 Beta V. For a beat there was silence. Yarvek frowned. What the hell are you? The lights in the room cut out completely. Not flickered. Not dimmed. Just died. Then a low hum began to pulse through the floor. Subtle at first. Then stronger. Rhythmic. Like a heartbeat. Yarvek turned in a circle, alarm rising in his voice. Hey. What is this? Guards. No response. A voice came over the intercom, deep, mechanical, unmistakably Terran in cadence. Voice print confirmed. Elias Vance. Sovereign command reinstated. Yarvek froze. No. That's not possible. You're dead. You're... The restraints snapped open. Vance stood, rolling his shoulder, the old joints cracking like gunfire. I was dead, he said. Then you woke me up. From somewhere above, systems across the ship began to activate. Not the ones Croth and his mercenaries had installed, those shorted out. Overwritten. Hijacked. The original Terran subsystems were coming online. Every corridor light turned blue. Vance looked at Yarvek, who backed away, trembling. You stole my ship. But you didn't erase her memory. The ship's voice returned, louder this time. Awaiting orders, Commander Vance. Vance smiled. Lock down decks 1 through 4. Reroute gravity and outer ring. Disable all unauthorized weapon systems. And start waking the subsystems in the war core. Acknowledged. Yarvek screamed and lunged, but Vance stepped aside with precision, grabbed the neural spike from Yarvek's own hand, and jabbed it into the mercenary's neck. Yarvek convulsed and crumpled, unconscious. Vance looked down at him. You picked the wrong ship. He exited the room with purpose, not rushing. The halls before him lit up in sequence, guiding him toward the bridge. The Sovereign Blade, once presumed lost in the final battles of Earth's war for autonomy, was no longer dormant. And her captain had come home. Above, in the command deck, Croth stared at the flickering holograms of ship-wide systems collapsing under their feet. Access codes were being rewritten. Doors refused to obey. Cameras now looped false feeds. Where is he? Croth bellowed, his voice reverberating. The ship answered in kind. You should not have come here. Croth turned pale. Far below, walking a corridor lined in dormant weapon emplacements now slowly rising to life, Elias Vance cracked his knuckles and murmured to no one in particular. Time to clean house. The hum of the ship deepened as Elias Vance moved through the corridor, his boots echoing against the steel deck plates like a steady war drum. The lights, once dim and blood-red under mercenary control, had shifted to a soft electric blue. Not blinding but familiar. Purposeful. The color of a Terran warship awakening. Vance's fingers brushed along the wall as he walked, almost unconsciously. He remembered this corridor, though it was layered now with graffiti and crude patchwork repairs. Behind every welded plate was a memory, behind every scorched bulkhead, a buried command. This was more than metal and wires to him, it was a part of his story. Of who he had once been. A voice spoke softly in his ear, modulated, but unmistakably human in design. Commander, subsystem alignment at 63%. Critical nodes remain compromised on Deck 3. Do you wish to initiate full lockdown? He didn't smile, not yet. Negative. Wait until the prisoners are relocated. I'll need them. Acknowledged. The AI's tone held a trace of something others might not notice, something approaching loyalty. Vance did notice. He hadn't just commanded this ship, he'd raised it from dry dock, supervised its systems during early testing, hand-coded sections of its combat AI. This wasn't just a weapon. It had been his sword, his sanctuary, and in the end, his burial shroud. The Sovereign Blade had faked its destruction under his orders nearly 15 years ago. Outnumbered, outgunned, and betrayed by their supposed allies in the Karth Dominion, Vance had ordered the ship into a self-induced hibernation after jettisoning survivors in encrypted pods. He'd stayed behind to ensure it succeeded. Only, he'd never died. He had survived, captured by scavengers, sold off as a nameless prisoner, passed through black markets like scrap. By the time he'd escaped, the galaxy had moved on. His rank had faded into rumor. His name became a myth. And through it all, the one thing that mattered, the ship, remained hidden. Silent. Waiting. Until now. At the end of the corridor, a door opened automatically, sealed before the mercenaries had arrived. A long dormant chamber flickered to life as Vance stepped inside. 3 cells lined the far wall. In one sat the reptilian prisoner he'd seen earlier, the one with the silver eyes. Threx, according to the AI's prisoner manifest. A former pirate turned slave, then dissident. The other 2 cells were occupied by a thickly muscled insectoid from the Dakar colonies and a wiry, pale humanoid with data jacks drilled into his skull. All 3 stood as Vance entered, the blue lights casting an eerie glow across their faces. Threx tilted his head. So, you weren't bluffing. Vance nodded once. This ship isn't theirs. Never was. The Dakar growled low. You're the one the systems responded to. We felt it. I'm Elias Vance, he said. Former commander of the Terran Vanguard. This vessel was mine before your captors ever set foot on it. The data-jacked man blinked slowly, voice faint. Then why were you in chains? Because I let them think I was broken. I needed to see where they'd taken her. I needed to know if she'd forgotten me. She didn't, Threx said almost reverently. No, Vance agreed. She didn't. He moved to the panel near the cells and keyed in a sequence only the original designers would have known. The doors slid open without sound. No alarms, no resistance. The AI trusted him. So, I can't offer you safety, he said as they stepped out. Only a choice. Stay here and hope Croth doesn't decide to kill you. Or help me take this ship back. Threx stepped forward first, claws flexing. You need fighters? I need warriors who can follow orders and hit hard when it counts. The Dakar nodded. You'll have my claws. The last one hesitated. What about after? You'll walk free. No cells, no collars. That was enough. Vance led them deeper, through passages long sealed off, maintenance ducts and engineering causeways that the mercs hadn't dared to enter. He paused only once, at a rusted bulkhead half covered in carbon scoring. He brushed it with his hand, wiping away the grime until the symbol beneath revealed itself. An eagle, wings outstretched. The seal of the Terran Vanguard. He stared at it for a moment longer than necessary. Then he moved on. In the engine room, exposed conduits flickered as the AI began its slow override of the ship's power structure. Lights danced across the mainframe core, subsystems flaring awake like embers in a dying fire being stoked again. The war core was still dormant, but it wouldn't stay that way. Not for long. Status? He asked. The AI responded instantly. Enemy presence remained strongest on the bridge and the weapons deck. Command protocols successfully blocked unauthorized attempts to access navigation. Hull integrity stable. Shipboard AI remains 74% compromised but recovering. Patch me into Crotha's internal comms. I want him to hear this. A faint chime sounded and Vance took a breath. Croth Varn, he said, voice clear, calm. This is Commander Elias Vance. You are in possession of a stolen Terran warship. You are hereby ordered to surrender control and confine your crew to the forward cargo bay. There was silence, then a burst of static and furious screeching. I don't care who you think you are, human. Croth bellowed through the speaker. This is my ship. You're a fossil, a ghost. You think you scare me? I'm not trying to scare you, Vance replied. I'm offering you one chance to avoid being spaced out in airlock. Croth cut the transmission with a curse, but Vance didn't react. He hadn't expected surrender. Threx chuckled. You always that calm when talking to lunatics? Vance met his eyes. You don't get to command ships like this by yelling louder than your enemies. He turned toward the engine core. The lights were now flowing smoothly, cycling in perfect rhythm. For the first time in years, the Sovereign Blade was breathing again. Commander, the AI said, Croth is mobilizing troops toward Deck 7. They will attempt to retake the auxiliary control hub. Vance nodded. Cut power to the forward lifts. Reroute them into the gravity loop. I want them running in circles for an hour. Acknowledged. He turned to his newfound allies. We hit the weapons deck next. If we control the guns, we control the fear. Once that's ours, we take the bridge. And Croth? Threx asked. Vance's voice dropped to a quiet certainty. He dies last. As they moved out, Vance felt the weight of the years lifting like armor being strapped back onto old bones. He wasn't the man he used to be, there were scars now both visible and not, but there was still something inside him that never broke. The fire hadn't gone out. It had only been buried. The deeper they went, the more the ship responded. Doors opened before him like loyal hounds. Gun emplacements tracked him only to stand down. The AI adjusted lighting to mark his path. Remembered, even after betrayal. Even after abandonment. Even after being torn apart and scavenged. The Sovereign Blade remembered its commander. And now, so would the galaxy. The lift doors groaned open to a corridor bathed in blue light. Elias Vance stepped out first, rifle slung tight against his chest, his eyes scanning with the precision of someone who had memorized every inch of the ship's layout years before. The Sovereign blade had been altered, vandalized even, but its bones were still Terran. Still his. The weapons deck lay just beyond this hallway, fortified by stolen barricades and manned by mercenaries who believed they still held dominion. They didn't realize the ground had already begun shifting beneath their feet. Behind him, Threx rolled his shoulders with a rasp of scales, his talons clicking rhythmically against the floor. He grinned, teeth serrated and eager. "So how do we do this, Commander? Loud or clever?" "Loud comes after," Vance said without turning. "We're here to make them uncertain. Uncertainty breaks discipline. And Krotha's crew is only held together by fear and greed. You shake that, they'll crumble." The Dkar, hulking and silent until now, finally spoke in his gravel-thick voice. "Then let's begin the shaking." Vance tapped the side of his comm. "AI, initiate scramble protocol Delta 2 on Deck 9. Cycle lighting and doors at randomized intervals." "Confirmed. Initiating now." The overhead lights immediately began flickering in unpredictable bursts, plunging parts of the corridor into momentary darkness. Sirens wailed half-heartedly before cutting out. The floor vibrated as security bulkheads slammed open and shut without command. Voices crackled over the mercenary comms, confused, panicked, contradicting each other. Vance moved swiftly, guiding the group through a maintenance duct that bypassed the main corridor. He stopped at a sealed access port overlooking the weapons control center. Below, Krotha's mercenaries scrambled like insects, shouting over each other as terminals flickered and gun batteries rotated of their own volition. A hulking Brack soldier tried to smash a console with his fists, only for the screen to spark and die. "Look at them," Threx murmured, crouched beside him. "They're tearing themselves apart already." "They're used to conquest, not defense," Vance replied. "They don't understand what a real warship does when it thinks." From their vantage, Vance located the command column anchoring the room, a central pillar that controlled all weapons interface. It had been gutted and rewired with pirate tech, but the original Terran inputs were still embedded beneath the surface. He dropped down without warning, landing in the center of the chaos. For a moment, the mercenaries didn't react, too stunned by the suddenness, by the audacity. Then weapons rose. Vance didn't hesitate. His rifle fired 3 times, 3 clean bursts, 3 bodies dropping before a single order was shouted. The room exploded into motion. Threx followed with a roar, barreling into a pair of guards and slamming them against the bulkhead hard enough to dent the wall. The Dkar descended like a hammer, his thick arms sweeping aside weapons and soldiers alike with brutal efficiency. Screams echoed as the resistance collapsed in the face of trained, coordinated violence. Vance ignored the scuffle, moving straight to the command column. He dropped to one knee, tearing aside the mercenary wires and exposing the original interface. A thin blue cable extended from his wrist, a hidden relic of Terran command implants. He connected it to the port and closed his eyes. A rush of data surged through his nerves, status reports, weapon grids, internal targeting schematics. He could feel the ship's pulse. She wasn't just waking up anymore. She was alive. And she was angry. "I have control of primary turrets," he said aloud. "Secondary batteries coming online. Hull breach seals are active. Forward cannons armed." The AI's voice entered his mind like a whisper. External threats minimal. 1 mercenary gunship attempting launch from Bay 4. Orders. Vance didn't hesitate. "Target it. Disable thrusters." Firing. A dull boom vibrated through the floor a moment later. A cheer went up from Threx. "They just lost their escape plan," the reptilian laughed. "Beautiful." Vance disconnected the cable and rose. The room was secure. Blood stained the walls, but the bodies weren't his. Not this time. His allies gathered near him, catching their breath. None of them smiled for long. They all knew this wasn't over. Threx gestured toward the comms console. "Want to let Kroth know what he's lost?" Vance shook his head. "Not yet. Let him stew." He stepped to the console and opened a secure line to the AI. "Status on Kroth?" "Bridge lockdown initiated by Kroth Varn. He has 6 remaining lieutenants with him. Life signs elevated. Attempting to override command lockdown now." "Let him keep his cage," Vance said. "For the moment." He turned to the others. "We move to secure engineering next. If Kroth tries to sabotage the core, we need to intercept. Once we control the ship's heart, we end this." "Why not just gas them out now?" the car asked. Because I want him conscious, Vance said coldly. I want him to understand what's happening when the ship he defiled turns against him. They moved through the vessel like a blade through rotted cloth. What few guards Croth had left were scattered, some panicking, others too slow to grasp how fast the tide had turned. By the time they reached the outer ring leading to engineering, the corridors were abandoned. The ship's voice returned. Commander, Croth is attempting to breach core access room 2. 3 of his men are carrying plasma charges. Vance broke into a run. Cut environmental controls to that corridor. Flood with containment foam. Lock doors behind them. Confirmed. Overhead, the lights turned white. Warning klaxons howled. Moments later, security footage showed Croth and his lieutenants trapped in a corridor knee-deep in thick foam, flailing, their weapons fouled. Vance paused at the door leading into engineering. His hands rested on the cold frame. I used to believe we'd lost, he said softly. That all we built had been erased. But this ship, she remembered. Threx put a clawed hand on his shoulder. And now she's yours again. No, Vance said. Now she's ours. The AI spoke once more, voice steadier than before. Bridge defenses disengaged. Command access restored. Croth Varn remains contained. Then it's time, Vance said. Bring us to the bridge. The final corridor stretched before them like a gauntlet, but no resistance met them. Every step echoed with the weight of history. The last time Vance had walked this path, fire had consumed the walls. Blood had slicked the floor. He had ordered the ship's own death. Now he came to resurrect it. The bridge doors opened. Croth stood in the center, face smeared with foam and fury. His lower left arm hung limp, burned. Around him, the remaining lieutenants stood with weapons raised, hands trembling. Vance entered slowly, unarmed. Croth screamed and raised his pistol. The gun did not fire. The AI's voice rang through the room like a judge's gavel. Weapons disarmed. Bridge control transferred to Commander Elias Vance. The floor beneath Croth shifted, a subtle motion, just enough to throw him off balance. Vance closed the distance in 2 strides. He caught the warlord's arm, twisted, and drove his elbow into Croth's jaw. The mercenary collapsed, spitting blood, groaning. Vance looked at him, impassive. This ship isn't yours. It never was. One by one, the lieutenants dropped their weapons. The car bound them with salvaged cuffs. Threx hauled Croth to his knees. Orders, Commander? The AI asked. Vance turned slowly, taking in the bridge, restored now, clean lines and humming panels, waiting for direction. Set course for the Terran core. Begin broadcast of system logs to Earth Defense Command. And send a message. Message content? He paused. Tell them the Sovereign Blade lives. The AI complied. As the ship aligned itself for its first real jump in over a decade, Vance sat in the command chair once more. The fabric felt the same. The gravity hum returned to its old cadence. Everything was as it had been, only this time it wasn't the end. This time it was the beginning. Elias Vance stood at the center of the bridge, arms folded behind his back, eyes fixed on the stars beyond the reinforced glass. The Sovereign Blade surged forward through the black, engines humming with confidence. It no longer felt like he was aboard a stolen relic, it felt like coming home. Every screen, every control panel, every breath of air through the ship's ventilation system resonated with familiarity. The AI, fully restored and synchronized to its original command hierarchy, ran quiet in his ear, responsive and efficient. No lag, no hesitation. The trust between man and machine had returned, rebuilt in fire and silence. Behind him, Threx leaned casually against a bulkhead, arms crossed, his scaled brow furrowed. What exactly happens when we reach Terran space? You think they'll roll out a red carpet? They'll roll out a battle group first, Vance said calmly. Standard protocol for a presumed destroyed warship reappearing on unauthorized channels. But once they hear the voice sprint, once they see the logs, I'll be recognized. And if they don't? Asked the Dkar, ever the practical one. He stood at the navigation console, his claws surprisingly delicate over the controls. Then we prepare for the worst, Vance said. But we have one advantage, the truth. We didn't just reclaim this ship. We exposed how far Earth's enemies have burrowed into its forgotten past. And once that's public, it'll change everything. The AI interrupted, tone clipped and direct. Incoming transmissions from 7 sources across the mid-reach colonies. Encryption matches black market syndicate protocols. They are requesting confirmation of the ship's identity. Show me. The forward holo display shimmered to life, casting a 3-dimensional image of scattered planetary outposts and trade hubs. Vance scanned the screen. Syndicate leaders, warlords, smugglers. Faces that once hid in the shadows were now scrambling into the open, desperate to verify the rumors. He tapped the console. Broadcast the ship's designation. No visual. No audio. Just 3 words. Confirmed. Transmitting, Sovereign Blade operational. Across the screen the chaos began instantly. Some disappeared mid-call. Others began shouting orders to retreat. One feed showed a station commander ordering the immediate purge of all Terran salvage. Another showed crates of stolen technology being dumped into a sun's orbit. The message had landed. Vance didn't smile, but a flicker of grim satisfaction passed through his eyes. The galaxy had forgotten what a Terran warship meant. Now it remembered. He turned to Threx. Time to send the full report. Every stolen log, every intercepted conversation from Krotha's command net, every detail about how these mercenaries operated on a scavenged Earth vessel. Even the part where they kept you locked in a cage? Threx asked. Especially that part. Threx snorted. You're a vindictive man. I prefer the term precise. The Tkar grunted. Transmission package ready. Routing through secure Earth command channels. Send it. Outside, the stars shifted as the Sovereign Blade exited stealth drive and revealed itself to the galaxy for the first time in 15 years. She no longer hid. Her hull bore the scars of forgotten wars, but her weapons were live, her systems humming. A survivor made whole again. Moments later, a ping. Then another. Then dozens. Earth Command responding, the AI announced. Multiple vessels inbound. Flagship Resolute Dawn leading formation. They are requesting visual confirmation of commander identity. Vance stepped forward, centered in the bridge camera's view. This is Commander Elias Vance of the Sovereign Blade. Voice Sprint Authorization Tango 773. Command override secured. Requesting priority debrief and emergency tactical summit. The silence stretched. Then a face appeared on the screen, an older man with silver hair and cold blue eyes. Admiral Rourke. One of the few still alive who had served during the unification campaign. Vance held the man's gaze. Hello, old friend. Rourke leaned forward slightly, disbelief flashing across his features. It really is you. In the flesh. Rourke's voice dropped an octave. We buried you. You tried. The blade buried herself better. Rourke exhaled slowly, studying Vance. You have no idea the storm you're about to walk into. Earth's changed, Vance. The Senate's fractured. The Vanguard is held together by tradition more than force. The moment your transmission went public, I received a dozen calls from groups trying to discredit it. Then they'll be thrilled to know I'm on my way. What's your intent? I want my flag reinstated. And I want full command authorization over the recovery operations of every Terran vessel lost to black market hands. This ship is proof they're still out there. And now I know where to look. That's going to rattle people. Good. Maybe they need rattling. Rourke smiled faintly. You've changed. Only on the outside. The screen flickered off. The AI resumed. Fleet path confirmed. Sovereign Blade will dock at high orbit platform Sigma. Estimated arrival, 13 minutes. Vance stepped back from the display. His shoulders were squared, his expression iron-hard. For 15 years he had been dead to the galaxy. Now he would make his return undeniable. Below deck, Kroth Varn stirred in his sealed containment pod. He banged on the walls with his good arm, still bloodied, still furious. Vance watched the feed in silence. There was no satisfaction in vengeance, not really. But there was clarity in consequence. He activated the intercom, speaking directly to the cell. You should know what you've done, he said. You stole a ship you didn't understand. You hurt people you never bothered to study. You thought humanity was fractured and weak. But we're not weak. We endure. And we remember. Kroth didn't reply. He only glared into the camera with seething, uncomprehending hate. But hate had no place on this ship anymore. Vance cut the feed. The ship vibrated slightly as it began its final approach. Below them, Earth hung vast and solemn, cloaked in clouds and light. The sight struck something deep inside him, something that had once been dormant. He had left this world believing his death would buy it time. He was returning not as a ghost, but as a reckoning. Behind him, the crew stood taller. Threx, the Tkar, even the datajack technician who had since joined their cause, they were no longer prisoners or outlaws. They were crew. The Sovereign Blade wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol. A warning. A resurrection. Approaching dock, the AI reported. Earth defense vessels holding position. All weapons offline. Vance exhaled slowly, the last breath of a long-forgotten war escaping his lungs. Hold formation. Prepare for boarding. Keep all systems alert. And let them see everything. The ship's engines powered down in sequence, a precise rhythm like a heartbeat slowing to rest. The docking clamps extended. The final seals engaged. Vance stepped off the bridge and walked toward the airlock, his boots silent, his hands at his sides. The doors opened. Beyond them stood a wall of armed Terran soldiers, weapons lowered but present. Behind them, officers, diplomats, strategists, all waiting to see if the myth was real. Vance crossed the threshold alone, coat brushing the floor, chin lifted, eyes forward. He stopped at the center of the docking ring and said nothing. The silence stretched. Then Admiral Rourke stepped forward and extended his hand. "Welcome home, Commander." Vance took it, and the future began.